and this is a competitive game with players battling against each other, recruiting different monsters into their team, training those monsters, and potentially even evolving them, much like you would expect in the game of Pokemon, but this one plays very different than Pokemon. I think it has a lot of nuance in the design that makes this a very snappy engine builder with a lot of great decisions and opportunities for comboing, and it also includes a ton of cute creatures, and you can never go wrong with that. But as I said, this is a competitive game of taming monsters, and there's a whole bunch of different monsters that you can recruit onto your team with a wide variety of abilities and effects that can trigger at different points in the game. They might trigger as soon as you get them, they might trigger when you get other monsters, or they might trigger when you do various other actions throughout the game, or even if your opponent does certain actions. But in this game, the monsters are much more friendly than what you'd find in Pokemon, and they're not actually attacking each other. Instead, each player has a health crystal, and you're going to be using your creatures to attack your opponent's health crystal, trying to bring that single health value down to 0 first. And of course, each of these creatures are unique with their own set of stats that come into the game in various ways and affect the various abilities in all sorts of different ways. But you're going to have stats for the type of creature, the size, the strength, and even the friendliness. And of course, each character will also have a class. And this is kind of like the elemental type that you would find in Pokemon, and it's going to give you specific advantages or abilities for being a part of that class. But these creatures aren't the only way to tip the battle in your favor, because each player is going to be drawing 3 ability cards at the start of the game, and then you're going to be able to choose one of those to put into your tableau. On your turn, you're going to be gaining an income of resources, which you'll be using to recruit the various monsters which are out on display. You'll then have the option to perform one of 2 possible actions. You can either perform the meditation action, which allows you to put 1, 2, or 3 of that resource onto one of your meditation cards, which will double its value, but you don't get those back until a future turn. This is great if you want to prepare yourself for future rounds in the game, but it does lock off some of those resources, making them not accessible to you now. And it does, of course, come at the cost of not performing the other action, which is to spend the tokens to recruit a creature from the supply. Whenever you do that, you're going to be taking the associated creature from the supply, assuming you meet all the requirements to do so. And then you're going to be adding that creature to a row of cards in front of you, always putting that creature to the right-hand side unless it has any abilities or effects that allows you to change that. Any immediate effects of that creature will get activated, but then you also get to activate your team, and the way that this works is by moving the token located on one of your cards, 1 card over to the right. This is how you're going to be activating the individual creatures on your team, because even though you just added that creature and it might have had some immediate effects, you don't actually get to use its primary ability until this token moves onto that creature. Whenever a creature does get activated, it can also gain a mana token, and some creatures can actually spend these to perform some secondary abilities, or instead you can choose to leave it there because there is a certain limit of mana tokens that creatures can accumulate, and once that is maxed out, it's going to trigger unleashing one of their more powerful abilities. But one thing to note about the river of cards in front of you is you're actually going to be starting out with 3 different filler cards that don't have any effects when that token actually moves onto them. So you're going to be trying to get rid of these as quickly as possible. And a way to do this is by recruiting monsters into your row, because anytime you do that, you'll be able to remove one of the tokens on that card. And once all the tokens are removed from a card, then you'll be able to remove that from your row, essentially making your monsters trigger more often, because once the token reaches the end of the row, it does cycle back to the beginning. And another added bonus when you do this is that once you've got rid of all 3 of those filler cards, each of them will actually have a special ability on the back, and you'll be able to choose one to put into your tableau, making you even more powerful and just allowing you to build up your engine in another way. I really like what I'm seeing with this one. It's super easy to set up, teach, and play, and it offers a whole wide variety of different creatures, making every game feel very different than the last. And of course, with those different abilities and the initial monsters that you decide to recruit into your team, that's going to be setting up your trajectory for the rest of the game, because each of the monsters will synergize in different ways, allowing you to explore and discover new strategies every time you play this game. If you think that sounds exciting as well, you can find a link to this campaign in the description below. And of course, you can click that notify me button if you want to get notified once it launches. And you will also get a $3 discount if you do sign up on their website before it launches. So definitely take advantage of that if you do plan on backing this one.